What up, world? You already know what time it is. Boy, man, there's no hospital, no need to bring no bus, but all we ever did was give a toast to the real folks who done paved the way in a real way for us players to play. Parlay this good game we got for y'all today. And let's get it in, man. If Diddy gets acquitted of the Mann Act, I think R.Kelly should too. I mean, he didn't get caught with no racketeering, but he was in trial for the RICO. He got the Mann Act. You know, he was hog tying broads and all that. You know damn well that the Mann Act is a racist law. If we're gonna convict one person and acquit the other, I think we should do it across the board, you know? So it's just a case of another judge hating on a black man. But I think Diddy got it locked down because he didn't get charged with the RICO, so he might could get off. But then again, Jack Johnson got charged with the Mann Act, and he never got off. So dig that. You know what I'm saying? Let's check it out. Fair use, fair use. I'm gonna break this shit down.
The number one low featuring R.Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. During R.Kelly's New York trial, one of the central allegations brought against him by the government was a supposed violation of the Mann Act. This federal law passed over a century ago was originally intended to prohibit the transportation of individuals across state lines for criminal purposes, specifically for prostitution or debauchery, or for any other such immoral purpose. The key word here is transportation. Not travel. Not movement. Not even visiting. The law deliberately uses the term transportation, because it implies a degree of control, arrangement and intent. Transportation is not just someone getting on a plane or a bus. It involves a person being moved often by someone else with a criminal purpose at its core. But during the New York trial, Judge Ann Donnelly and the prejudiced jurors failed either through misunderstanding or willful interpretation to acknowledge this important distinction. They acted as if transportation under the Mann Act could be stretched to include almost any form of movement, even voluntary travel made by adults for ordinary, consensual and often celebratory reasons. Let us be clear, the Mann Act is not a travel ban. It was never intended to prohibit people from crossing state lines for personal reasons. Whether someone travels to attend the Oscars, to support a music show, or simply to visit a loved one, that is their personal liberty. Travel is a fundamental right. The Mann Act does not criminalize travel. It criminalizes transportation with illicit intent. So how did we get from a law meant to combat forced prostitution and sex trafficking to a situation where R.Kelly was convicted because someone allegedly traveled from Chicago to California, or from Michigan to Chicago to meet him? Where exactly was the crime in that? This is the question that anyone with a sound understanding of legal language and constitutional rights should be asking. Take for example a scenario presented during the trial: a woman travels from Chicago to California to attend the Oscars. An event that celebrates film, music and artistry. She does so voluntarily, perhaps even eagerly. There is no coercion. No criminal plan. No hidden motive. Just an adult exercising her freedom to move and be where she wants to be. Yet according to the prosecution and apparently to the jurors and Judge Ann Donnelly, this counts as transportation for an immoral purpose. And therefore they deemed it a violation of the Mann Act. that interpretation not only stretches the law, it breaks it. You see, the Mann Act's authors were very precise in their wording. When they chose the term transportation, they were distinguishing it from mere movement or travel. They understood that people would travel across state lines for many reasons: work, leisure, relationships, performances, or just a change of scenery. They didn't criminalize that. They criminalized situations where someone was being moved for an illegal purpose, most often against their will, or through deceit, or with criminal coercion. So why did this jury and this judge decide to redefine the law? Why did they decide that voluntary adult travel, done without coercion, could somehow fit under the definition of transportation for an immoral purpose? Why was the term transportation conveniently interpreted to mean any instance in which someone crossed state lines regardless of who arranged the trip, whether it was voluntary and whether or not a crime even occurred? When you examine the facts, what you find is a dangerous legal precedent, and one that distorts justice. At the heart of the matter is confusion, or perhaps manipulation of legal language. Transportation is not synonymous with travel. This isn't semantics. It's the foundation of the law's intent. To third-party action. It implies the person being transported may not have initiated the move or may not even have full control over it. It usually involves influence, arrangements, or orchestration by someone else. Travel, on the other hand, is autonomous. It's individual. It's a right. When someone books a flight to another state on their own will and for their own purposes, whether romantic, professional, or recreational, that is travel and not transportation by interpretation under the law. Even if that ticket is paid for by someone else, say their relative or their host in the destination state, it remains travel because it's voluntary and not motivated by financial gain in form of payment for services provided. And yet R.Kelly's trial in New York blurred this line completely. It is both shocking and disheartening that such a fundamental legal distinction could be ignored in a federal courtroom. More than that, it's dangerous because if the Mann Act can be applied in such a way, then any person who is romantically involved with someone from another state could one day be accused of trafficking simply because their partner visited them. Where does this end? Is every couple who lives in different states suddenly a suspect? Are music artists now guilty if a fan or acquaintance travels across state lines to see them? Can every out-of-state relationship be weaponized into a federal case? The absurdity of the government's interpretation during R.Kelly's trial becomes even clearer when you consider the lack of any coercion, threats, or illicit arrangements in the instances cited. These were not cases of manipulation or exploitation. These were adults engaging in voluntary relationships or events, often in the public eye and full awareness of their choices. Faith Rogers was 20, and even Azriel at 17 was travel legal. And yet somehow the prosecution turned these into federal crimes. Even more troubling is how the judge allowed this twisted interpretation to shape the jury's understanding. Instead of correcting this misapplication of the law, Judge Donnelly appeared to embrace it, guiding the jurors down a path where basic logic and legal clarity were ignored in favor of emotional narrative. The result? A verdict built on misapplied law. A conviction rooted not in fact, not in coercion, not in criminal enterprise, but in a misreading of a century-old statute. The truth is simple. The Mann Act was never about consensual or non-motivated travel. It was never intended to apply to adults making their own choices about where they go and who they see. If R.Kelly had transported any of these women to serve them to other men in exchange for money or their freedom, we would call it trafficking. But donating an air ticket to his girlfriend who is visiting? How's that trafficking? To use it against R.Kelly in this way was not only legally flawed. It was unjust. Those jurors, whether out of confusion, pressure, or bias, acted not on legal principles but on misdirection by the judge. They confused transportation with travel. They confused agency with manipulation. They confused relationships with rackets. And in doing so, they helped secure a conviction that now raises serious questions about the legitimacy of the trial itself. And let's not forget, if the law were applied fairly, consistently, and with respect to its true meaning, This charge would have never made it to the courtroom. But it did, and it succeeded because language was twisted, intent was ignored, and the desire for a conviction outweighed the commitment to truth. Let this be a warning. When courts begin to redefine words to fit a desired outcome, when jurors are encouraged to interpret voluntary behavior as criminal, then no one is safe. The rule of law becomes a tool of agenda and not justice. And that is what happened in R.Kelly's New York trial. The use of the Mann Act against Mr. Kelly was a misapplication. It was based on flawed logic and a complete disregard for the law's original intended purpose. It ignored the difference between transportation and travel, and in doing so, it led to a wrongful conviction that should alarm every American who values due process and the integrity of the justice system. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.
Tonight, we have breaking news as we come on the air involving President Trump and the Jeffrey Epstein case. The Justice Department spending hours today meeting with Epstein's co-conspirators.
Maybe this will set precedents and reverse R. Kelly's conviction, because I don't see how one doesn't correlate with the other, you know? I mean, Diddy was pretty much doing everything they said he was doing, or he was just a voyeur, he was just a watcher, so it doesn't matter. Come on. The same damn thing. So I ain't going for none of the bullshit. If Diddy is acquitted and he's looking to get his 2 convictions thrown out, then revisit it. I ain't saying Diddy ain't got a case, because he pretty much does, since he didn't get the RICO. But if there's racketeering in R. Kelly's case and not in Diddy's, you got to, some of that raises eyebrows. You got to be like, that don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. You know what I'm saying? Got to make sense. Shit just got to make sense. That's all I'm saying. So we got Diddy's lead attorney speaking on the case. Yeah. They said it's not racketeering. What R. Kelly did was racketeering, though, because he pissed on the chicks, he hogtied them and all that. But they never left. They was willing. They could have walked right out the door. So, you know, it's a lot of what ifs. But let me just break it down to y'all real quick. Ain't too many ifs, ands, and buts about it. You know what I'm saying? Look,
his lawyers just found a brand new motion for bond. So what's it mean? I sat down with his lead attorney, Mark Agnifilo, to find out.
Mark Agnifilo. Mark, great to be with you. Thank you for being on the program today, case, and you were an outstanding advocate for Mr. Combs.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So let's get into this bail package that you have proposed. I read your motion, and you talk about the exceptional facts of this case and how the way the Mann Act is being applied is kind of like one of a kind. Would you walk us through what you mean by that, please?
Sure. So the Mann Act was passed in 1910, and it's changed a few times through the years. But really what it's geared at, what it's focused on, is prosecuting people who make money from the business of prostitution. And that's not the allegation against Mr. Combs. The allegation of Mr. Combs, what the jury found, essentially was that he was a user of services provided by sex workers, essentially a John, for lack of a better word. And the Mann Act just historically hasn't been applied to Johns. It's a financial statute. It's really been applied at people who look to make money from prostitution. And so since that's not how it's being applied here, we made the argument that we have to, under the case law and the statutes in this area, that this is an exceptional reason, and that Mr. Combs should be considered for release on bail because of it.
Mark, I read in your motion, you say that Mr. Combs may very well be the only John sitting in a jail right now for his crimes. What makes you say that?
So we've done a nationwide survey of Mann Act cases, and we're not all the way finished, but we've looked at probably close to 100 cases, and we don't see any other case where a John, the user of prostitution services, is being prosecuted under the Mann Act. There are instances as some kind of connection with the arranger, the organizer, the people who make the money from the prostitution services. But in terms of just being a straight user of services provided by a sex worker, we think he might be the only person in the country.
I certainly see what you're saying and can appreciate the legal argument you put forth in your motion for bail for Mr. Combs, Mark. And even if the judge agrees, let's say the judge agrees that this is an exceptional application of the Mann Act, and your client may be the only one who's jailed right now. You've cited every other case you can find. It's an ROR type bond situation. What about the other component that we know the judge is very concerned about, and that is your client's propensity for violence? Even you yourself acknowledge that in the closing arguments of the case with what happened to Cassie on the video that the world saw, and in the instances with Jane. How can you reconcile your position now in this motion for bail that he should be free and is not a danger to the public when we know these instances happened in the past?
So I think the key thing with what you said is that it happened in the past. I mean, the only instance that we have in recent memory was one, and the trial evidence showed this, where Jane essentially, started a fight with Mr. Combs, smashed his head against the counter, threw glasses at him. Jealousy was always a feature of their relationship, and Jane was jealous of his relationship with another woman. And so that was about 14 months ago that happened. But other than that, everything dates back, a number of years, 2018 and before. And as we made the point we made in the bail application as well is, Mr. Combs is seeking counseling. And he couldn't continue with this very outstanding program, which I believe he'll come back to if he's released. And that's really, I started my career in the Manhattan DA's office, and I would see, all manner of domestic violence, and it's a very difficult crime for everyone involved. It's difficult, obviously, for the victim, who has to live in fear from one of the people in her lives that she's the closest to, or he's the closest to. But what I saw in the DA's office is that these were not resulting in lengthy prison sentences. These were resulting in appropriate, treatment programs, self-awareness, therapy, things like that. And I think this is what Mr. Combs needs rather than an extended time in prison.
Mark, my understanding is that Jane wrote him a letter to get into the batterers program before he was arrested for the instant case. Is that correct?
So they were in the process of writing a letter. So what happened with Mr. Combs, and this is because of his notoriety, and I think this is really unfortunate, is that I tried very hard to get him into a batterers program in April, April and May, before he got arrested. And I think because of his notoriety, a lot of these programs didn't want to take him. And so I think what was happening around the time of the incident that was testified to at the trial is that Jane was in fact helping him write a letter to get into one of these programs. And at the end of the day, he didn't get into the program that I think the letter was directed to, but we got him to another program, and he did start, therapy and counseling in that program, and did that for several weeks before he was arrested. So that's what your question is. The answer is yes, that is true.
And thank you for that, Mark. Is he availing himself of any programs now in the jail?
So the MDC doesn't have the programming that some other jails do, because it's not a final holding facility. It's really for people who are in a pretrial posture. So it's by its nature somewhat transient. So other prisons where people go to serve their sentences have much better programming, and so the programming at the MDC is not really that well established. That being said, we've cobbled together therapists and people who go in and speak with Mr. Combs, and he is availing himself of that.
When we come back after this break, we're going to turn our attention to sentencing. Currently, the date is set for October 3rd. Remember, Diddy was acquitted of the crime of racketeering conspiracy, acquitted of the sex trafficking offenses, convicted of transportation to commit prostitution. That carries a maximum allowable penalty of up to 10 years in prison. When we come back, I ask his attorney what he's hoping for in terms of a sentence and Diddy's plans after it's all said and done. We'll be right back.
I'm Vinny Politan, closing off.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
And keep my life straight.
They were killed by
Being let go from her position.
No, I thought Maureen Comey was an outstanding lawyer, and is an outstanding lawyer, and I think will go on to have a terrific career, regardless of where she is. I think it's a loss to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it's unfortunate, in my view, what happened to her personally. I got to know her and all the members of the government trial team pretty well during the trial, and I have a great deal of respect for all of them, including Ms. Comey. But no, that's an outstanding office. The Southern District of New York has a deep bench, as they say. They're very good lawyers in the office and on this trial team. So I don't think the presentation of evidence or arguments will suffer, even though Maureen left.
Mark, it seems like your team and the government are just miles apart on what kind of a sentence would be appropriate for Mr. Combs. What is your greatest hope, your most ideal hope for sentence for him?
So my hope, obviously, is that he gets out as soon as possible. We filed a bail application this morning, and my hope, obviously, is that the judge sees the wisdom in that and agrees with us. The government will oppose it, and the government will oppose it for reasons that they believe are sound. Now, in terms of sentencing, we believe that a sentence along the lines of time served is more than sufficient. If you look at what Johns are sentenced to, even if they're prosecuted in the first case in this country, no one's doing close to the time that Mr. Combs has done in jail. So I think we have to treat like cases alike, and I think he should be released in short order.
Mark, what are his hopes for his life? Because at some point this will all be said and done. We don't know what exactly the sentence will be that the court imposes, but after that, does he hope to return to music?
I don't know that he's thought that far ahead. The phrase he uses with me, and I can share it because he said that I could, is he says he feels he has more to give. And I think that's the focus. I think that he has spent a lot of time reflecting. He's a religious man. He's a man who has 7 children. He takes care of them, all of them. He takes care, one of the long-term relationships with whom he had 4 kids, has passed away, but the rest, he takes good care of the women he's in a relationship with. He's really a very caring, dedicated person. And so I think he wants to emphasize that part of his life, come out of jail, spend some great time with his children, who he misses very much. They get to see their dad. And I think he's going to be happy in the short term, having the simpler pleasures in life, but I expect he's a genius in my view. And he has unparalleled talent and ambition and vision. And I would say vision is probably the most pronounced of all those things. And I expect big things out of him, but I think we need to let him have a little transition, have some downtime. I just spoke to him an hour ago. I said, I'm not going to rest until you feel the hot August sun on your neck. And have the simple things in life, and you can take it from there. And I think he sees the wisdom in that.
Mark, he really couldn't have a better advocate. I mean that sincerely, advocate to advocate. I was incredibly impressed with you and what I got to see and how passionately you've worked for him and his defense. One last question before I know we have to let you go. As you know, no cameras are allowed in federal court, and that's something I hope that changes one day. Tell me, if the public were able to have watched, do you think it would have perhaps changed any public opinions? In other words, is there anything you think the public might have missed in not being able to actually see the trial?
That's a great question. And it's such an interesting issue. I mean, there's something about federal court that's wonderfully traditional. They didn't have cameras in 1789 when the Southern District was created, and it hasn't changed. And it's about trying cases in federal court where things haven't changed. And there's so much about that that's wonderful. That all being said, I do think the public would have come to view Mr. Combs very differently than the way he was depicted in the tabloids and in these lawsuits, which lack merit. And I wish that they could have seen the evidence firsthand, the way the jury did. And one thing I want to throw out, I mean, not too much, but there's been a little second guessing I've seen of the jury verdict by some people in some publications. And this was an immensely dedicated jury. They were on time every day. They paid close attention. They all took notes. You can tell when a jury is really functioning at 100%, and this jury was. And I wish that everyone could have seen what the jury saw. I think that would have been very good for Mr. Combs and very appropriate for the world to have seen it with their own eyes. Mm-hmm.
Most definitely. And the respect you showed us in this interview, you're exuding for the other side. Everyone's just doing their job. The government did what they felt was best under the circumstances, following the law as they saw, and you all did your job advocating for your client. Mark Agnifilo, thank you so much for the conversation. I hope we can talk again sometime.
Thank you. I hope so too.
All right, so now let's take a look at the defense's bond proposal package. So Diddy's legal team is proposing that their client be released on a $50 million bond. I should say it's a mansion. It's really a mansion, as he awaits his sentencing in October. Now, the bond would be co-signed by 3 financially responsible people. His travel would be limited. It'd be limited to Florida and to New York, and his passport to electronic substance abuse treatment and electronic surveillance to make sure that he stays where he's supposed to stay.
I mean, am I missing something here? Is it a Diddy case similar to the R.Kelly case? So why should it be charged differently? Shouldn't it be charged equally under the law? I mean, let's keep it real. You know? And then they're going to say, oh, it's wrong. It's wrong. R.Kelly did way more messed up things than Diddy. Did he, though? I don't know. I don't know. And then to further it, prostitution across state lines. Wasn't that what R. Kelly got charged with when it came to the racketeering part? Transporting prostitutes across state lines? So I don't know, man. No, I don't think R. Kelly offered $50 million to get out. It just seems weird, you know? Even Bill Cosby. Didn't he get charged with the Mann Act too? Let's look at that. Let's break that down. Oh yeah, his charges were overturned. Way different. But yeah, man, if y'all believe that R. Kelly should stay in jail and Diddy be out, you all don't understand the justice system. Whenever someone has precedence, that means they gotta convict said person equally. So they gotta go back on all these cases that they used the Mann Act against certain high-profile people. And they gotta go over those cases and see if they were charged appropriately. You know? So let's see if Diddy's bail package was lucrative. He asked to be released on $50 million bond before sentencing. Now, $50 million is a lot to go back in October. October is in like 2 months. So I don't know what he's trying to do here, but I don't think it's going to work. But damn sure, if he gets out on bail, he ain't going to go back inside. Yeah. If that's the case, get R. Kelly up out of there. It feels like Diddy's team got a whole bunch of this team, man. And they got, what's his name? Donald Trump potentially acquit him. Hey, man. Never know. But if he pardons Diddy, that goes to show you that he ain't no real Republican. No. So let's hit up TMZ and see what we break down for this here situation. You know TMZ be lying and shit, but damn. It is what it is. And it ain't what it ain't. We gonna put a little word in the Oh yeah, Fair Use Act. You know what I'm saying? Let's just get back straight to the nitty gritty.
that the Trump administration to there wouldn't be as much backlash.
It's
Pardon him.
It's part of it, but it's not all of it. I think what underlies it is, for all sorts of reasons, Donald Trump feels that he was unfairly targeted by the Justice Department, and particularly the Southern District of New York.
Sure.
And so, in Diddy's case, he is being was prosecuted by the Southern District of New York. His defense team has said from the get-go, this was a targeted prosecution going into somebody's bedroom. It was unfair, and it resonates with Donald Trump.
I get that.
But it's not just
a mirror.
that, Harvey. Comey was the lead prosecutor in the case, and you know that he hates James Comey, who is Marine.
Well, the Justice Department fired him.
And she's been fired, although nobody will say why she was fired. But
this is what's interesting. We are told this is the judge's decision on bail. Or we told you that Diddy has asked to be released on $50 million bond, and the prosecution has until tomorrow to respond to that. Presumably, they're going to oppose it, and then the judge is going to rule. We are told if the judge rules that Diddy gets bail, Trump will wait to make his decision until he sees what the sentence is. If the judge in October 3rd, if the judge denies bail, that Trump is going to make a decision possibly immediately thereafter.
Most likely, the judge is going to, based on previous decisions.
The big previous decision was pre-conviction.
But there was also a decision after the conviction where the judge denied bail.
For $1 million. For $1 million.
So basically the judge is going to say, because you're now offering $9 million as bond, I'm going to let you out.
We'll see. But if the judge does...
The judge's reason for not letting him out was that you and your attorneys have said that you are a violent person.
I get it.
That part hasn't changed in what?
He's like not Friday. It's going to come next week. And Donald Trump, if he's denied bail, we are told because of these discussions between the White House and the defense team, he will rule on. He will make a decision.
Why would he do that pre-sentencing? I mean, like pardon
because
Diddy do an entire trial.
I can give you two reasons.
That's kind of unfair too.
I can give you two reasons. The simple reason is that he would say it accentuates how unfair it is to keep somebody in, behind bars for violating the Mann Act.
Right.
The bigger reason is, as one very well-placed source told me, it is the perfect distraction from Epstein.
And that's wrong. It is not the perfect distraction. It is an imperfect distraction. Because instead of talking about Jeffrey Epstein, now people will talk about the fact that you are letting out another rich buddy, letting him out of his sentence, whatever it is, whatever the sentence is, you are wiping that away. And people will immediately remind Trump and the administration of the fact that Diddy, we have this video that will, I know he was not on trial for it. I know that's not what he was convicted for, but the video of him beating Cassie is very much in people's minds.
You just proved my point.
It is imperfect.
No, you proved my point. It's perfect.
No,
hold on.
Because
hold on.
So instead of the pedophile, it's the domestic abuser.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he wants to do.
That's an imperfect distraction.
In their view, it's a perfect distraction because they want to get rid of Epstein. And if the discussion
the way it will be drawn up by everyone is, no, not only were you friends with Epstein, now you're such good friends with this guy who's a domestic abuser.
Yeah, but the thing is that the media can't handle two stories at once this way. So either it's going to be Epstein
when they
or Diddy.
intersect that closely,
They don't really. They're not
bad guys.
I'm not.
Is how it will be painted.
Well,
okay,
I'm not.
I think can.
They'll go crazy if he pardons Diddy.
Claudio, I think we're like, you guys are right. This is White House crimes. This is the same guy who just said that he's allowed to pardon convicted trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell and who called the Epstein files a hoax. There's a pattern here. And it's not about justice for victims. That's what we should be talking about. It's about protecting the rich and powerful from accountability.
That is exactly how it will be painted by the media. And not just the media, the same people, even the same Trump supporters who are writing him about Epstein will now write him about this.
No, they won't. They feel very differently about Epstein.
You think those people are going to go like, oh, Diddy's okay.
We got to move on, but I'll tell you why. Because there's no mystery around Diddy. There's a huge mystery around Epstein. And that's why MAGA wants this file opened up.
Right.
But with Diddy, there's no mystery. It's just going to be controversy. And if Trump can choose that controversy over Epstein, he's gonna.
Well, an absolutely remarkable scene in Ozzy Osbourne's hometown today, where thousands of people filled the streets of Birmingham to say goodbye to the godfather of heavy metal.
It was like a royal funeral.
It really
was
very much in the UK, exactly this sort of procession that they would have for a member of the royal family. And it was incredibly moving just as a fan, but then the real heart tugging started when you saw Sharon, Jack, but the whole family
you
arrive.
just see the grief on Sharon's face. It's really moving. I'll tell you, Sharon, the family is really amazing. I know Kelly some, and I know Sharon over the years. And Sharon was one of the most dedicated spouses I've ever encountered. Yeah. She was so ride or die for Ozzy and helped him. Sharon Osbourne, she was responsible in so many ways for his career, after Black Sabbath.
Yeah, her dad was Black Sabbath's manager, and the idea was that basically he would send Sharon to get Ozzy cleaned up and shaped enough to go back to Black Sabbath. And that wound up not happening. He became Ozzy Osbourne, and Sharon was the one who did that.
She was his manager.
But more than that, obviously they fell in love, got married. She's the one who got him to go to rehab for the first time. Yeah. For many times. It was an ongoing battle for Ozzy for most of his life, but she made him a better person.
And I can say that, you saw the video where she's breaking down and she's crying and putting the flowers down. I don't know if that was necessarily grief. I mean, obviously there's grief, but it could also be just a reaction to the outpouring of the entire city.
It's such a weird, that video to me is such a weird mix of solemn and celebratory.
Yes.
It's a very solemn event. They're in black. It's a memorial for Ozzy, but everyone's chanting they love him and cheering, and
yeah,
you have to feel both of those emotions so intensely.
And there's no way that she and the whole family didn't feel both of those emotions.
I agree with you. I didn't really think of that, but maybe she was overcome just by the sheer, the size of this crowd. I mean, it's you don't see this a lot.
No.
And he traversed different generations. I mean, Black Sabbath is one, his solo career is another, the Osbournes
The
TV
reality
show is one, and you know,
and was that every single
weeks before his getting on stage, performing in ways that nobody.
To that Crazy Train actually debuted the first time on the week. It didn't chart back when it came out, and so Ozzy's now charted 6 decades.
That's nuts.
That's impressive.
These are the kinds of facts that I learn from Eric every week on our podcast. Get to the hook. And we did an Ozzy episode this week, and I learned so much from Eric.
That
I do
was
every
an
week.
excellent shameless plug.
Yes, it was.
Well done.
Subtle.
Black Sabbath was a very important band to music in general, not just its own genre. And Ozzy Osbourne led that. He led that movement. He led what I believe is the creation of most genres of music today. And I really respect him, and everything that he's done, he deserves that applause. He deserves that love in London. And I give my respect to Kelly.
So y'all see what I'm talking about? He just wants to get out by any means, you know. He's already in there, man. Just chill out. You know that the judge ain't gonna grant you no bail. Donald Trump's gonna give you a pardon. But if Donald Trump gives him a pardon, then there's no hope for R.Kelly. But if they throw out that, try to reverse that charge, then we got something to work with. You know? How long has R.Kelly been inside for? A couple of years now. You never know, man. Maybe Trump might pardon R.Kelly too, but let's see that. So y'all let me know. What do y'all think? Do you see Trump or just Diddy? Maybe both. Let's check this one out. Fair use.
Of Rand B. Now spoken with whispers. Judgment and labels. He never asked for. But beneath the noise, beneath the headlines, a closer look. who knows all too well about being hunted by the system should give this case a second look, and consider it for one of the most powerful tools a U.S. president holds, the pardon. Let's break it down. 2021, R.Kelly was convicted in a New York federal court on charges that included racketeering under the RICO Act and violations of the Mann Act. At first glance, the average person might say, if he's guilty, was he convicted because of a clear, fair and constitutionally sound case? Or was it because prosecutors twisted the intent of laws to fit a narrative that needed to make an example of someone? Now let's start with RICO. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, better known as RICO, was created in 1970 to go after the mafia. It was designed to dismantle organized crime rings, syndicates that engaged in drug trafficking, extortion, murder and widespread corruption. But in R.Kelly's case, prosecutors didn't go after a crime ring. They didn't prove there was an enterprise built for criminal purpose. Instead, they called Kelly's personal assistants, bodyguards, drivers and staff, his regular entourage, a criminal organization. The same structure that almost every successful entertainer operates with: tour managers, personal assistants and travel coordinators. These people were painted as co-conspirators in a criminal enterprise simply because they worked for him. The prosecution redefined normal industry practices and standard music touring as elements of a criminal racket. Let that sink in. This was not a mob. It was a music career. Yet RICO allowed prosecutors to tie together unconnected allegations across years, places and people, and use hearsay and emotional testimony from decades ago to build a sweeping charge. It's the same kind of prosecution that allows the government to go beyond proving specific crimes. Instead, they paint a character. And that's exactly what they did with R.Kelly. Now here's where Donald Trump should pay attention. Because Trump himself has been indicted under RICO charges in Georgia and accused of being the head of an enterprise aiming to overturn an election. In Trump's Georgia case, his lawyers, his political allies and his advisors were called a criminal organization, just like R.Kelly's assistants. The exact same playbook. If prosecutors can turn regular business or legal activity into racketeering, then the law no longer protects citizens. It hunts them down. That's why Trump, more than any other political figure in our time, should understand the threat this poses. If it can happen to a singer, if it can happen to a former president, then who's next? By pardoning R.Kelly, Trump wouldn't just be freeing one man. He'd be making a powerful statement that he will not stand by while prosecutors distort the law for political wins. Now let's talk about the Mann Act. A law passed in 1910 to stop the transportation of women for immoral purposes across state lines. But this wasn't just about trafficking. The law was quickly used as a racial weapon. Famous black men like Jack Johnson, the heavyweight boxing champion, were targeted under the Mann Act for interracial relationships. Chuck Berry faced the same fate. The law has a shameful legacy, being used to destroy successful black entertainers whose private lives offended the racialized morality of the day. In fact, Donald Trump did take some action against this rather draconian law when he pardoned Jack Johnson even in his death. Fast forward to R.Kelly. In his case, the Mann Act was used to criminalize relationships with women who traveled across state lines, often willingly, sometimes with their own parents' involvement. The government argued that their travel in hindsight served an immoral purpose. But what does that mean? Who defines immoral? And how can someone be punished for actions that were not illegal at the time, simply because a prosecutor later calls them immoral? This law was never meant to criminalize consensual relationships between adults, or any travel made by women with agency. It was never meant to prosecute a man for decisions made by others to travel with him or meet him in another state. And yet here we are. It's the same government overreach we are dealing with. The same manipulation of vague language. The same tactic that Donald Trump himself has warned Americans about, weaponizing the law for political optics. And just like Trump, R.Kelly was tried in the court of public opinion before he ever saw a courtroom. The media frenzy, the documentaries, the hit pieces, the interviews with selective editing, the viral tweets. It all fed the narrative. By the time he was indicted, R.Kelly was no longer presumed innocent. He was presumed guilty by a society into moral panic and by a justice system that forgot its own rules. And who better to understand this than Donald Trump? Here's a man who has spent the last several years telling America, this isn't justice. This is political warfare. They're not just coming after R.Kelly. They're coming after anyone who doesn't play by their rules. If Trump truly believes that, he must see what was done to R.Kelly and he must act. Now let's be clear. This isn't a call to say R.Kelly is a perfect man. No one is. But the issue here is not about perfection. It's about prosecution and whether the government followed the law or twisted it. R.Kelly was given a 30-year sentence. Longer than some murderers. Longer than many white-collar criminals who defrauded thousands. Longer than predators who had far more victims and far clearer evidence. Why? Because they didn't just punish the man. They punished the symbol. They punished the story. They used laws that were never meant for this purpose. They broadened the definitions. They made emotional arguments. They stacked testimony from people who got immunity in exchange for what the prosecution wanted to hear. Well, that's not justice. That's bad politics dressed in a legal robe. And that's exactly the kind of system Donald Trump says he's fighting. So the question becomes, will he? Will he show America that he's willing to stand by those who have been railroaded by the same forces that target him and pardon R.Kelly? Will he demonstrate that the pardon power isn't just for allies and insiders but also for those caught in the crossfire of a broken justice machine? Will he take a bold step, knowing the media will attack him for it but history might thank him? Because if there was ever a case that mirrors ever a moment say enough, it's just a man in a cell. He's a man who lost everything. His voice. His freedom. His rights. His name, and he may never regain it all. All to the government misuse of its power. But what he deserves now is not more silence. He deserves a real shot at total redemption. He deserves another shot at fairness and truth. And Trump, more than any other figure in modern American politics, has the platform, the power and the personal reason to make that happen. A pardon for R.Kelly isn't just about one man. It's a stand against the system, and that's a stand we desperately need. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell.
Yeah, so if Trump wants to make a stand and make it politically sound, you gotta acquit both brothers, man. If he's saying that there's no Epstein list and it was all a farce and made it up, then you're gonna have to acquit the brothers. The brothers can't be getting the brunt of this whole shit. When y'all only got Harvey Weinstein and what's her name? Ghislaine Maxwell. That's all you got. Can't work with that. We can't work with that. But no, you're gonna see there's gonna be some type of way they finagle around this. Maybe they're gonna just let out Puff. Who knows? But I'm sure R. Kelly's lawyers aren't incompetent. Once they let out one, they gotta let out the other, right? You know? But he did what he did to a minor, so I didn't see any minor situations with Diddy. So that could be but that's what they like to do, you know? They like to create laws and try to put us in our place, you know, and tell us, y'all want this to happen? Well, y'all gonna be able to brunt of it, you know, no matter what it is. So we gotta see the big picture out here. We use the law to our advantage because the laws are instated, so we could have a better society, right? More sound, astute society that functions on its highest level. You can't have that when you have a bunch of criminals and a bunch of people locked up unjustly, you know? So they can talk about reform. But I think this is where we destroy or rebuild, you know? We gotta destroy all these racist laws, acts, and rebuild this culture for the better, you know what I'm saying? Because it's been co-opted. We all see it. From Shannon Sharp having to pay a lowly OnlyFans white girl to Epstein, to Weinstein. All these high profile dudes. Yep. Shannon Sharp got fired from his job, but did you see Skip getting fired? I'll see Skip getting fired. So, anyways, it's your boy Matt Mizzle. That's all I wanted to break it down for y'all real quick. I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from. It's all fair in love and war, you know what I'm saying? So you know my slogan, keep it real in the field, get out of the field.